Okay, so the internet has been a fucking nightmare this week, at least from my point. The internet's always a fucking nightmare, but at least in the things that I care about. So, like, some of this has to do with the Vic stuff. Some of this has to do with just tangentially related to the Twitter and Discord. But it's been a weird just combination of things. We have all this re-drama of the Vic stuff coming up with certain things cherry-picked out of a document that was sent to one of the sent to Ron Toy about defamatory tweets. We have a bunch of super lawyers coming giving him their opinion on things, and then we also have this whole Steven Crowder and what was the other guy's name? I don't.
That's gotta make us look like we're super in the know about the situation.
Yeah, no, it's not okay. So it's not really about Steven Crowder because I feel like everybody who said something about Steven Crowder has said it, but it kind of just plays into this whole like Twitter, Discord, whatever mentality because things need to stop and things need to change with how people are handling themselves. People are fucking children on the internet, and I'm a fucking child in heart, and I'm saying that I don't feel like I'm that mature of a person. I feel like I am a very immature. I've got a lot to learn. Like I'm very socially inept, awkward. I don't always say the right things at times, and whatever. This is making me feel like an old like fart that just like just like I'm like it's like kids these days, and most of these people are older than me.
Yay. Well,
So
I'm looking forward to this this little tour.
So I'm gonna start off by bringing up from a easy starting place. So Digibro has this podcast thing he does every so often called the Artso Fartso podcast, and he essentially just goes about just ranting about whatever random things. It's called Artso Fartso's Whirling Dervish. It's just a random slew of thoughts that has come to him in the past week, and something he mentioned on either the most recent one or the one before that was how Twitter and Discord have kind of part of it was how terrible the reading comprehension of people on Twitter are. The other part was how Twitter and Discord have basically fucked everything, because you have Twitter, which shallow takes, because you can never form a good argument on Twitter,
of course,
because you only have so much. So it's always the fastest. It's always like a quick hot take on whatever. Twitter is the hot take engine, and then you have Discord, which are insular communities of people who agree with each other. So when you have these two sorts of and granted these aren't the only two things, but Twitter they're the two biggest services that people use. So when you have Twitter where people put out they put out arguments that aren't good, aren't deep. There's no real conversation that can be had on Twitter. When you're on Twitter, you don't go on Twitter to read a paragraph or paragraphs of text. You go on Twitter to see what your friends shared or what LOL thing was done. Discord, you're there to hang out with people you agree with. So the only time you're ever encountering people you disagree with is on Twitter, which is the worst place to be doing so. And the only place that you're in, and other than that, you're spending time on places like Discord where you're surrounded by people who agree with you. And when that happens, extremism.
Yeah, that's true. I've seen some weird stuff on Discords because it's I guess just a small little group, and you see things that no one would ever say in any normal context, and you're like, whoa.
And there's nothing inherently wrong with having your group of people, and I don't think Discord itself is the problem. I think it's Discord combined with Twitter being what it is. Because at its base nature, Twitter is a propaganda machine. It's not a real social network. It's a propaganda machine. You put your idea.
That's a hot take.
Your idea. Yeah. Well, think about it this way: if social, yes, it's social media, but it's propaganda social media, and propaganda in this term is not even necessarily a bad. It's not necessarily a bad thing about propaganda. You can advertise your a show, things you care about, ideas you have. Twitter's a great place to quickly get your idea out there. But to the same extent, you're not going to get any nuance. You're not going to. It's not like with something like Facebook, you can put your whole entire argument out there. But Facebook's Facebook, and that's a whole nother situation. But this is something I've felt for a very long time, is that Twitter's a propaganda machine, yet that's what most people use to interact with each other.
Okay, I kind of agree with you in a sense that, like, well, Twitter is sort of like the problems with social media, but like crystallized, like in its purest form, because of the brevity. But it's interesting, like, there are some, like, the low character count and the lack of room for nuance and the often not having your actual identity on there are considered like those have been criticisms of Twitter for a long time. But as someone who uses Facebook a lot, I often don't see Facebook arguments are at least as bad, if not worse, than Twitter ones.
Well,
I think what's different about Twitter is that you can have like a hashtag, you can have like movements build up, but like in terms of discourse and being civil, both kind of suck.
The difference between something like Facebook and Twitter is generally with Facebook, these are people you know. And sometimes that makes things worse because when you already have certain preconceived notions of people when you're debating them. You already have like, oh, I know who this person is. This is why they're saying this. So you don't really engage them on the ideas. You engage on the why they're talking about.
I see arguments between like people, like maybe two people I'm friends with, but they don't know each other, and they'll have an argument on my page, and it's like kind of garbage. Or if you're on like a community group page, like I'm on one for my city. Where obviously people don't really know each other. People aren't very civil online, and like it's not really about anonymity.
Well, yeah. Well, I think you're right. You're absolutely right. But I think Twitter takes those problems and makes it 10 times worse.
That's what I'm saying. I'm saying it crystallizes it.
Because at the very least on Facebook, you have an individual you can be like, okay, it's this person that's a problem, or this person I don't agree with, or whatever. Twitter in some ways is more of a hive mind of sense. You got a bunch of like, it's never this one person who says this thing, unless if they're if they're like a public figure of sorts, or they're like a celebrity or a YouTuber or somebody that people know. Other than that, it's a bunch of random accounts just chiming in, and you have no idea who they are, and you see 100 messages from people that you don't know or don't have identities to an extent, and they're going out there saying things, and you can't really attribute these ideas to people because they don't seem like people to you.
That's true. And also, like, with Twitter, like, every conversation has an audience. Like, there's every issue that everyone's talking about is like a public spectacle. And you'll, like, see, like, one person will get, hundreds of retweets on something they say. So, like, the thing about Twitter is that arguments or whatever can they catch on fire much faster and burn a lot brighter.
And I think it comes down to this. On Facebook, you could relatively convince somebody, even if it's not the person you arguing, you can make your case, and someone reading through the debate can see like, oh, this person's more, I agree with this person more, or I agree with this person more, or these people, both of these people are fucking insane. What are they talking about?
Yeah.
On Twitter, you can't make that argument. You can't make the case. It turns into just whatever your bias is. Like, and like, for example, like on Facebook, it'd be like, oh, I don't agree with this person's point of view, but I see where they're coming from. I see why they're saying this. But I think Twitter has made things so vitriolic and so toxic that you can't even have those sorts of debates anymore without people's biases just... And that's sort of the state of the internet we're in, is people don't engage each other on the basis of their arguments. They're engaging each other on the shallow nature, like the shallow side of whatever group would have said sort of thing.
Yeah. Well, it's funny how like the internet is meant to be this thing that connects everybody, but in a lot of cases, like, and it does, but it also provides a giant platform for us to not listen to each other. But yeah, I mean, another thing about Twitter is that, like, because it isn't like one particular conversation thread you can follow. It's like a crazy spiderweb going in every direction. It's not like you can easily get a cohesive view on a subject.
Oh yeah, and if there's a topic that's really big or really popular, there is no way you're gonna scroll all the way to the top and read every single tweet, because by the time, let's say you do that, you go to the top and you start reading through. By the time you're done, you catch up where you are. There's been 100, 200 more tweets, and you can never really catch up.
Yeah,
it's an impossible precedent.
So this was all like a tangent, because you said that Twitter's a propaganda machine. But where were you going with that thought anyway?
Okay, so by the nature of Twitter, it's a platform that is, I don't know if this was intended for, but it's really great for sharing ideas, for sharing for getting products out there, to like in general. It's a great advertisement platform. But it's so easy to manipulate people solely based on their preconceived biases, because you don't have to give any nuance to your statement, and no one expects nuance on Twitter. No. So you can give out any general platform, and people will read into it whatever their bias is, and that can be towards your benefit or towards not, essentially. Yeah. And that's sort of where we've kind of got it into, because if this is just on Twitter, that would have been fine. If Twitter was a toxic website that people went on to argue, be terrible people to each other, and got it out of their systems, that'd be fine. It's the fact that it's leaking out into other mediums. You see this on YouTube. You see this like in Discord. You see, like, if you're on a Discord server with a closed group, if you see someone that's giving if you have a slightly different take on a situation, or you're not sure on that the group's correct on something, you fear being ostracized from the group, because everything's become so polarized these days.
I mean, I think you could definitely point to Twitter as a driving force in this societal change, but it's hard to say what caused what. It feels a bit like a chicken and the egg situation.
Well, it's a mixture. Well,
but it's definitely a strong contributor there for sure.
Yeah. Well, granted, yes, it's not Twitter itself that has caused this. Facebook definitely contributed to this too, but nobody really uses Facebook that much anymore, at least in the mass. As a mass social media platform, Twitter's done a much better job of maintaining a large base because of its brevity.
All right. I mean, I assume that's true. I don't think people in New Zealand don't really seem to use Twitter, but sure.
It might be a country-based thing. I don't live in New Zealand, so I can't say what
everyone's on Facebook people over here. People it feels like Twitter's about.
It feels like everybody's on Twitter or some other site over here. Facebook has really died out, at least, and
that's interesting.
The only people I know using Facebook are like the people in the generation above me, like my parents' generation,
right,
and whatnot. And they don't really like, the only people who really post stuff on Twitter are the kind of more of your attention whores.
I mean, keep in mind my country is very tiny.
Yeah, well, I think that's sort of maybe is to the benefit, because Facebook's a great connecting with people platform. Since you have a smaller country, it might be the benefit of people connecting, and
perhaps
where Twitter's more of a global. Twitter's more of a global platform, so.
But all right, but you were saying that Twitter is like, because it's like the most popular platform at the moment, you can reasonably point to it as something that is, at least, driving a lot of the division.
It's the popularity, it's the lack of nuance, it's the sheer ability, the tagging and the hashtagging.
I will say that like there's a because of the kind of culture of Twitter, I sometimes find myself like because I like to think of myself as someone who wasn't in like one particular box, and I follow a variety of people, right? And
I don't think most people actually are in one-sided box. Twitter kind of creates that.
Well, what I was gonna say is that like there'll be sometimes I'll see a tweet that I agree with or think is funny, but I'll think twice about liking or retweeting it, because what will other people assume about me just because I follow this person?
Yeah. Well, let me jump into a really good side, like change the direction of this a bit. You know that that picture you shared in the group chat, the one from about the piece of shit comment?
Yes.
Okay, so this is the prime example of what I'm talking about. Now, for our audiences, we're going to move on to talking a bit about the current stuff with Fic. I was kind of hoping to wait till we had some more concrete, conclusive stuff going on. Like, the discovery deadline's on Monday, so Monica and Ron will have to, if they don't put an objection out towards the discovery request, then on Monday we should have all the documents requested by Vic's lawyers. So that should be very interesting and should be telling on more which side actually has more say on the defamation case.
Okay, maybe for anyone who hasn't isn't fully in the know, should briefly introduce what we're talking about.
Okay, so if you haven't heard about the Vic Mignogna situation, this very popular voice actor, he's probably one of the most popular voice actors by sheer sheer number of fans and fan base. One of the things that makes Vic much different than a lot of other voice actors is his engagement with his fan base and how he's taking care of his fans. If you go to conventions or if you see pictures from conventions or hear from people from conventions, Vic pulls in the longest lines out of any other voice actor, at least in the anime field. In their most recent Kamehacon, he was doing signings essentially all day at the convention, right. from the start of the convention to the end, all 3 days. So this guy is very popular. He brings in a lot of money to conventions, and he's in high demand. So a few months near the end of January, there was these accusations that came out to him about him being a sexual predator, sexual harasser, being inappropriate with fans, etc. And the shitstorm kind of started there because we started off with this #KickVic thing. Vic got removed from a lot of conventions, and he got fired from Funimation, which, interestingly enough, he was already let go from Funimation before the hashtag even started, so keep that in mind. So there's been a lot of shit going on. Vic hired a well-known law firm in Texas with 20 years experience, and they usually represent really wealthy people in Texas. And so he's taken on this case. He's suing, and they filed suit against Monica Rial, Ron Toy, which is her fiance, Jamie Markey, and Funimation. And now we're kind of in this period of the lawsuits sort of happening. This is the discovery phase. There was a hearing, was it a few weeks, it was either last week or 2 weeks ago, about the fucking depositions. Yeah. So, which I do want to talk about this because I'm going to kind of give a bit of an update, and from my perspective, because there are people that within our friend group that I think need to hear kind of the whole picture, because this kind of leads into this whole shallow propaganda making of the whole of Discord and Twitter. Because I'll put this out there. No, I don't care if Vic's an asshole. I don't care if he might very well be an asshole. He might be a terrible person to work with. But we're dealing with the considerable the complete destruction of reputation here. This is when you destroy someone's reputation this much, it makes it hard to find a job. They lose the jobs, and they lose their sources of incomes. Now, Vic himself might be wealthy. We don't know. I don't know how wealthy he actually is, but in general, in principle, I'm really against depersoning and destruction of reputation without solid evidence. So, when we're looking at the Vic case, one of the things, one of the real aspects that has made this really frustrating to watch is how weirdly shady and intellectually dishonest the KickVic, and I say KickVic, I'm not talking about the whole side, I'm talking about people kind of spearheading it, putting out the information and whatnot, how intellectually dishonest they've been about the whole situation. There's the original article from IO9 that completely that in the original version of it did not have Vic's statements, answers to the questions. It just said that Vic didn't agree with these things, or Vic remembered differently, when Vic gave very more detailed responses to their questions. So that was already a bit shady, because it's why are you doing this? Then you have there's a certain person on the KickVic side who's sort of he's the person who originally shared the piece of shit comment, and he sort of seems to be this attention seeking side of person. There's this very much he likes the attention, and I guess that's another thing about Twitter. Twitter's full of people out there for clout, and it doesn't matter which side you're on. There's always clout chasers on Twitter because it's an easy way to get massive likes and massive. It's a huge ego boost when you post something and you get a lot of likes, lots of shares, or people start following you, etc. That's another real downside to Twitter because it attracts clout chasers. But either way, let's look at this, like looking at this specific current thing going on with this. When we're looking at that piece of shit comment, and it is a single snippet from a tweet, like from a single like document of 400 documented cases, documented arguments of defamation. Now, from what I understand in Texas law with defamation, if Vic's lawyers don't argue every individual possible count of defamation, then Monica and Ron Toy's lawyer, like Casey Eric, can use that against them. So, for example, if they as crazy as it sounds, technically in Texas, if Trybien is and his attorney team didn't put in that piece of shit, didn't say Vic isn't a little piece of feces. At some point during it was either during the trial or during the exact, when they're talking about damages if Vic won, Ron Toy's lawyer could have been could have made the same exact argument and it could have actually damaged their case.
Yeah, I think it probably is important to think about how in a situation like this they're probably throwing everything at the wall just to see what sticks. Yeah. You got to be thorough. If your job is to write every single possible thing you can, then I mean, look, think objectively, that's a hilarious thing to put in a legal document.
I mean, it is a hilarious meme.
It's worth mentioning, and
it is a hilarious meme.
I wonder how I mean, to what degree of sincerity that was written in there. I wonder if it's partially sort of a troll, but in legal language. But it's probably like you said, it's one page out of a giant document. Because it's one thing to say that's hilarious, that's an actual legal argument being made in a courtroom somewhere. But it's another thing to say, well, look at these idiots. They have no idea what they're doing if they think this is a good idea. I think it's to treat that like that is an important piece of the pie seems to I don't know. I mean, these guys are lawyers, right? They can't be that
20 years of experience. It's not 20 years of experience with litigation with really wealthy people too. It's not like they have a reputation with the elite in Texas. And why would the elite be hiring somebody that was this moronic if this was a moronic thing to do?
It's an argument of absurdity, but it's it's either a joke or just a consequence of the process of being as thorough as possible and writing every single thing that you can.
Texas law is really silly. I mean, I listen to Nick Rekieta's streams. I've been listening to it ever since this, just because it's the only. Unfortunately, it's the only place that had the only person who's really covering every legal aspect of it.
Yeah.
And full disclosure, I am someone very much on the left. I could be even considered someone who might be part of the extreme left. Depending on where you fall in this political spectrum. Nick Rekieta is someone I would consider someone on the more libertarian right. I really don't agree with most of his politics.
Yeah.
But I can at least appreciate his intellectual honesty, and watching him get so fucking frustrated at these people who don't know what they're talking about in regards to Texas law. This doesn't come off as someone who's an Alex Jones or a Steven Crowder I'm out there to own the liberal. I guess I wouldn't say Alex Jones is an own liberal guy. Alex Jones is a
save the world from the demons. I think.
Yeah, he's a crazy person. But Nick Rekieta isn't your Ben Shapiro or your Steven Crowder who use clear tactics to make the left look bad. And granted, there are a lot of things the left does that feed into their narrative. It does frustrate me how moronic people act
But you feel that this guy in particular is trying his best to present things as they are.
Yeah,
or
well,
without
the way that
twisting things, even if he has
well,
an opinion.
Yeah, well, the way that and you can see this sort of like in the way he talks too. He never talks in absolutes. He's like, Vic will probably win this thing. Vic will do this. Vic, like this will probably happen, or this will be a difficult hurdle for them to overcome. But he's constantly citing Texas law, and he's constantly doing this and that. And the other thing that's he's been trying to do is he's been trying to get lawyers with different opinion on his stream. Like if there is somebody somebody on Twitter who has a different opinion, he will post and things. It's like do you want to talk to us? DM me. We can. He's not afraid to talk about this with other people.
He sounds like he's doing his due diligence.
Like I could think a lot of his political views are reprehensible, but he's just because I disagree with a lot of what he's a lot of who he is, doesn't mean I'm gonna write off the one thing that he does good. I agree with.
Well, I think most people aren't most people aren't trying to follow it in the way that he is, or trying to actually be educated on the situation. They see, here is bad guy, destroy bad guy. It will win. We are the good guys.
But that's sort of the internet in general. There are very few honest actors out there on the internet on both sides.
Yeah.
I could probably count the people I think are good actors on the palm of my hand. That's it's that bad. But that's sort of the state of the internet, because I don't think it's not that I think everybody on the internet's this evil trying to manipulate people. I think it's more of a complicated mess of people wanting attention, people trying to do their ego boosts. They have their bias. They're not going to look into things anymore, and they're just going to say things because they want their ego boost.
Oh, yeah. Well,
and then you have the people who don't want to look. They're so caught up in their own groupthink and their own biases that they don't want to believe the other side could be correct, and they don't want to engage in debate or whatever with the other side because they, for whatever reason, think that the other side's either a dishonest actor or they're going to brainwash them or whatever. I mean, that's sort of what I went through when I was a teenager. I refused to listen to the other side because I was afraid that they were going to convince me that they were right, because I wasn't convinced in my own.
Well, there's a problem with the liberal use of the block button on Twitter.
Yeah,
or the
definitely.
Mute button or whatever.
Or even worse, the block bots.
Damn.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But people it just kind of comes back all to this. People need to not rely on other people for information. They have to do their own research. And I know it's a pain in the ass. There's not that much time to do things these days because everything's going by a million paces. But if you're going to comment on something,
yeah, exactly. Well, that's my thing.
I'm not really following
these situations.
Don't share something, don't like something unless you've done the minimum amount of research. Because let me give you an example. For all those people who think Vic's going to lose the case, okay, maybe things will come out about the defamation stuff, and Vic might not win the defamation stuff. He's got a really solid case on the tortious interference, specifically with Ron Toy. Unless if the law is massively changed by time judgment comes, Vic will win the tortious interference claim and probably a defamation claim against Ron Toy. So I don't know if Lunch, I don't know, you haven't been following things.
No.
So there were text messages leaked from that Nick Rekieta leaked out a few weeks ago that came straight from Trybien. And it's the text message conversation between Ron Toy and Kamehacon, which led to Kamehacon initially dropping Vic. In the tweets, in the text, one of the guys from Kamehacon specifically says, "We will not drop Vic we will only drop Vic if you can promise us that there will be criminal charges against Vic." Ron Toy says, "I promise you will be criminal there'll be a criminal investigation on Vic." And that's what led Kamehacon to agree to drop Vic.
Okay.
Where's the criminal investigation?
Oh, right, because that never exactly happened. It was more just just public defamation and not much else. Apparently,
yeah, that is.
I mean, there was apparently the internal investigation at Funimation that nobody knows
well, it was
anything about.
It wasn't even Funimation; it was Sony that did the investigation.
Yeah, that was weird, eh? Like,
there's a lot of weird, they could have said that Sony did an investigation, and you want to know what? That would have made their case look better if they said Sony did the investigation, because it would have made it look like a third party not related to Funimation did it. Therefore, it would have seemed less biased.
Yeah, I guess maybe they wanted to take credit for doing the good thing,
or they didn't want to wrap Sony up in it for whatever reason. Like, but there's like. If you do if you go in with an open mind and you do the most modicum research on the Vic issue, you don't like. I'm not telling you. Like, it's completely up to you. You can still think that Vic sexually harassed or sexually assaulted somebody, and like that's fine. That's your opinion. Like I don't personally think that's what's happening right now, but I haven't wiped that from the possibility. I haven't seen we haven't seen all the evidence. We haven't seen the discovery yet. So I'm holding out judgment until I see the discovery, until we have depositions and whatnot. But you can't pretend that the Kick side, like the voice actors, the people reporting on it, have been dishonest actors throughout this whole thing. Let me like, I don't want to go on too long about this whole thing, but think of something like the Pro Jared situation. Now, the Pro Jared situation in general is also a sticky situation, but you know what sort like made Heidi, like, where we don't have the same situation where we have a bunch of people backing up Jared like we do with Vic.
What's that?
Pro Jared was the one that made it public first. Heidi shared texts and actual like evidence that supported her side, and then there was actual document. Like, when people do shitty things, they get documented. The supposed private pictures of Jared's nudity, like, those got documented and those got shared. There was proof. Vic is someone who's been on camera for 20 years. Like, he's been in the public eye for 20 years, and the best that they can give us in regards to sexual harassment or creeping on fans or whatever are selectively picked videos of him doing voices in character. And granted, yes, they're creepy, but they're not to the same level of the accusations leveled against him.
Yeah, I think no, Pro Jared situation is totally different because it's like an open and shut situation. It's like really obvious what happened, and that it is at the very least mostly true. And both Vic Mignogna, like, it's difficult, like, for anyone who's like being in a position like him, of like being someone with like fame and maybe misusing it a little bit. Like, I can see that would be really easy to be that kind of person and not leave that much of a trail, honestly. But I mean, this is kind of like what we talked about in the first Kick Vic discussions, where it's like, part of what makes it so tricky is that it is hard to get hard evidence on something like this, especially if it's like lots of seemingly innocuous behaviors over 20 years, over like lots of different people who don't really know if anything bad happened.
But that's part of the problem with people holding on to these things for so long and not coming out right in a like people say that the law isn't really shaped to deal with this. Okay, nobody is good at handling these sorts of accusations when they've happened 5-10 years later. That's just a fact, because you don't have the evidence to prove it, and at the same time, while it's very easy for someone to get away with a crime when it's been this long, it's very easy to skew public opinion against somebody and defame somebody when there's when you have absence of evidence.
This is a situation where this guy, got basically all of his like his people in his own industry like publicly denounced him, basically, and like directed the Twitter rage. And so, I don't know, man, this is like a tricky situation. I don't
but that's what it comes down to. It's okay that it's a tricky situation. You're allowed to have your biases. You're allowed to say, I think it's more likely that Vic did it, or I believe these I'm more inclined to believe these sources rather than.
But if I'm
not.
gonna have like a fully defined opinion, I should at least like have looked into everything. Like I'm talking as someone who casually sort of followed the situation back when it first emerged. So like it's hard for me to like lay a gavel down, or to contribute to the public destruction of him,
Yeah.
Like I think he probably is like kind of a creeper, probably. Just because I do believe that to some extent, even with how dramatic the internet is, I do think that where there's smoke, there's fire, at least a little bit. Like there have been other people that, like with Louis C.K., where like there were rumors of what the weird shit he got up to like years before he actually got like done for it. So it's like there's probably something going on. But that's just me speaking subjectively. I haven't looked into all the stories.
There's a difference between saying I think he's a creeper, or I saw him being creepy around people, and he's a pedophile, he's a sexual harasser, he's a rapist.
Okay, look, some of those are giant leaps, and some of them aren't. Like, but a sexual harasser and a creeper are like kind of close to synonyms.
But let me like. It's one thing if someone says, I see this person being creepy, or I see this person like sexually harassing people. When it's the same people coming out and saying, like people from these industries saying that he's doing these horrendous things, without backing it up or willing to back it up. And it's going to be interesting when the defamation comes out, or if they object to the defamation. Because it's rape and assault are much bigger crimes, and that's probably more what's led to like conventions wanting to drop him, like, or like people not want to work with him, is specifically those accusations. Being a creep is creepy, but saying someone's a creep doesn't ruin their reputation or make them seem to be a criminal. It's just, okay, this person's a creep. I don't feel comfortable around him.
Well,
then there's this person's literally not safe to be around. Those are completely two different.
Well, they're
and granted,
different.
He might not be safe to be around.
If, like, I can imagine not being sure if someone is, like, that's already a fuzzy line. Like, it goes both ways.
Okay, wait. Let me reframe this. Because the same people making these claims against him for saying that he's a creep and harasses people are the same people that's saying that he's a rapist and he's a pedo and they want him to go to jail. It lumps all of the arguments together and it puts I
definitely think it's bad for the case, the overall case. If there is something bad going on with him, like by exaggerating things or conflating different crimes or like generally being disingenuous, in the long run you're hurting the legitimacy of what you're saying.
And here's the thing, if he does win the defamation lawsuit because of specific things said, it's gonna make all the other claims seem not that bad. It's gonna make it seem like you hyperbolized everything. It makes the line of where the truth is much harder to see.
Yeah, so if it turns out that he actually is like a rapist or something, then that's a fucking colossal failure on everyone's part. Like, he could actually be this really bad guy, but if it wasn't argued correctly, then he gets away.
But
that's a big if. I don't think he's a rapist.
Okay. But let me say this, and we can end the case. There's something I really want people to internalize about this whole like cancel culture, reveal culture, exposing culture, especially in this Me Too era. Because, well, yes, we want to protect women, we want to protect our society and whatnot. We always have to draw a line somewhere, and these sorts of accusations. Let's say Vic is 100% innocent of the rape. Or even sexual harassment. Let's say he's just a bit creepy and over exact. Like, Vic sort of comes off to me as the type of guy that doesn't really have much in terms of boundaries, or he's bad at reading social cues or whatever. He's this very energetic, very positive, optimistic. Like, he doesn't do things out of like malice or like bad will in that regards. Now, this is my impression of him. Sure. I'm not saying this is true, but just from seeing him on camera and hearing about people who interacted with him, that's sort of like, and there's a lot of misinformation on the other side in regards to like there have been like I guess the other big thing about what makes all this complicated is that there have been like proven like falsities on the proven false allegations against Vic.
Yeah,
from
I just
randos on the internet.
I just can't imagine that all of them are false. I feel like it had to begin from somewhere real.
Like, and granted that could be true.
That's
this is also
my hunch.
But this is also where I'm currently standing at, and this is where my impression is that there's a lot of people who don't like Vic because he pulls in lines that are like massive lines, larger than the other voice actors, and there's big jealousy in that regards. Vic seems to be a bit of a prima donna. He's a bit he's very specific. He cares so much about his fans. Like, I wouldn't be surprised if Vic, while he's at conventions, cares more about his fans than convention staff. And that sort of shows in regards to him being late to late to panels due to staying late for signings. That he gets on a lot of people's bad sides because his priorities are different than what the other voice actors and what other convention people's priorities are. There is the whole fact that he always requests for his religious panels at conventions, and in general, because of how we view religion now with the whole like Catholic Church and whatnot, it's like, again, I've actually noticed myself, like there's like, it's not hard to say, oh, LOL, Catholics are pedophiles, or like, oh, Catholic men, or because of the Catholic Church.
Yeah, sure.
It's like those sorts of rumors can pop up easily just because of like, oh, he's indoctrinating these youth. Oh, he's kind of like one of those priests or whatever. And then there's that like claims that and accounts that he wouldn't sign gay he wouldn't sign yaoi at a panel like at a convention like in 2010 or something. And that pissed a lot of people off, and that kind of like on the internet that caused a little bit of a kind of helped form.
It's interesting to imagine that this is like, yeah, there are a couple of things about his character that people don't like that make people more tempted to want to jump on the bandwagon of, oh yeah, well I bet he is some sexually repressed, indoctrinated fucking priest dude, you know, like. It makes people
and something that was like interesting. Like I listened to the Anime News Network the old Anime News Network interview with Vic, and one of the things that Vic mentioned was that he does get like at conventions and in like the industry, he does feel that he's that because he's so like that that there is a bias out there against him. He is kind of like shunned to be like, or there's this dislike for him because he's so open about his religion, because he's a very openly religious man, and he does and granted, I don't know like how much of that would be a hyperbole on his part, but in regards to the interview, he said that's what he feels like is going on. He feels like there's I can't even think of the right word for it, god damn it. Prejudice. Like he feels like people in the industry are prejudiced against him.
Yeah, well, I think religion definitely isn't cool anymore, if it was ever cool. Mm-hmm. No, or yeah, I think a lot of like traditional religious values like really don't mesh with what we're deciding is the new morality, which is a bit more free and open and accepting of all kinds.
Well, it's sort of
depressed.
Sort of interesting. Well, it's sort of interesting, like, and this is a whole nother topic, but I think what's interesting about the modern, I don't want to say extreme, but like the modern vocal left, is that there's a lot of speak about inclusion, yet shutting down anybody with a disagreeing opinion.
Yeah, like, it's a little contradictory, yes.
Yeah, and like I get it. Like if I'm like if you were bullied, if you feel like that there are like you're the victim of racism or homophobia or people you know, or you're a victim of sexism, like it's completely understandable to have those emotions and want to think and project that onto anybody who could say something similar to that. That's not outside the realm of possibility. That's a very human thing to do. Or if you're seeing someone saying racist or sexist or homophobic things and you see other people interacting with them, it's not hard to say, oh, those people are just as bad or just as evil. Which I think sort of encompasses a certain part of the Libertarian Party who just don't give a shit. Because there's a lot of libertarians that don't, like, they don't care if you're gay, they don't care if you're black, they don't care if you're a woman, but they don't care if you don't like gays, you don't like blacks, or you don't like, it's just, there's this weird sect of the Libertarian Party, and that's sort of, I see where Nick Rekieta lies. It's that he's not, like, racist or homophobic or sexist. He would never put out, like, in the same way that maybe, like, a classical racist or sexist or homophobe
classical would be. Racist, sorry.
Yeah. Well, it's not like he hates these groups of people and he wants to do them harm or doesn't want them to have, like, rights. It's more of that, like, he sees, it's more, in some ways, there's a bit of a reaction to the modern social political climate of, there's a lot of these people on the left who make the left look really bad and make a lot of the policies on the left look really bad.
It's weird that like, in some ways, religion is becoming like a new counterculture. Like,
yeah, no, that's
like, you look at like Ben Shapiro and Jordan Peterson or whatever, who are like,
that's actually really, I'm really glad you brought that.
And now that's the cool rebel thing to believe.
Okay, that's I'm really glad you brought that because it's one more. That's like kind of like where I want to end things because there's a certain like idea I've been trying to get to.
Mm-hmm.
The left is no longer the counterculture, guys. The gay, like, being gay, being black, being woman is no longer the counterculture. The industries are starting to recognize you guys and give you support. The main mass media is starting to give you guys support. While it's not like you're the main culture just yet, like conservative, like the conservative or like religion was like 50 years ago, you were like the social left is becoming the main culture.
In terms, sort of, I think becoming is the right word rather than is.
Yeah, it's becoming. You're becoming the. You're becoming.
Well, because like you've got giant corporations are now deciding like, all right, well now we've got rainbow flags on Pride Month and stuff. Mm-hmm. Slowly, they're realizing that this is who we're supposed to be marketing to because this is the next generation and they're all on this same page. But it's definitely not all the way there yet, just because, like, I think... I mean, there in a lot of ways. I mean, the whole, like, abortion situation is super, like, has a long way to go. Well, I think it's, technically a crime here. It's, like, it's really hard to get an abortion in New Zealand, and, like, if you're, like, trans rights and understanding is still really not where it could be. But in terms of public discourse or whatever, it's definitely becoming the dominant, like, safe position. Yeah. And so, like, if you're like the idea that an edgy or not edgy, well, maybe an edgy, like a teenager that like doesn't want to accept what the world is throwing at them is turning to Christianity, that's a bizarre fucking reverse world that we're living in.
Yeah. Well, this is sort of the idea I want to get to. Like, I'm saying this from a position that like as a leftist, as someone who wants to see left policies succeed, the left needs to fight smarter, not and less with the initial shallow emotional response to things. Because right now what's going on is you're ostracizing a lot of people in the center. Coming from someone from like a very like center, like Ohio area.
Yeah.
Like it's the amount of frustration with this whole pride thing is like, and this is and the frustration with gays here that like there are some like gays like I guess my mom's best friend is like this is a lesbian who she was a Christian throughout her life, but she was a lesbian and she felt disassociated from the church.
Yep.
She's a really cool person.
Okay.
But my mom's talking like to me and she's like the modern the modern pride movement doesn't represent all gay people or all people on the LGBT spectrum, but because of how loud and how sometimes ridiculous people are because of exposure culture, like just the way that internet culture is, it's ostracizing people who just want to be normal people or just want to. You're taking this gayness and you're taking this pride and you're turning to get to something that's other than normal. It's kind of weird. You spend you spend all this time saying it's normal to be gay or it's normal to have these things or we're just normal people, and the way that things are going on right now is and this is something that's I've been seeing throughout, is it's making it seem like it's anything but normal. You're saying your point by highlighting your differences about being gay. It's like, oh look, we're gay, and like yes, gay exposure is good. Like people, like there's still a lot of work to come, but you're at the point where you need to focus on the policy and reforming your public image so that people like. There might be a bit of difference. Like if I don't know how like what the big cities are like because. But if you need to focus on rural America right now, because like in your more rural places, because that's where your conservatives are, and you're not winning over any conservatives with the way that pride's being handled. I guess that's what I want to.
Well, what
you got to fight smart.
So how is the way pride is being handled then? You mean with like just the?
I think it's not indictment on gay people. This is more because of Twitter and because of the internet. And the way that
you're saying that
so
like
extreme.
That the like first of all you like where do I start? You like your mom's gay friend or whatever doesn't necessarily feel represented by the larger queer movement, which is like
I guess to another extent, Nick Rekitas had like. One of his high school friends is this very vocal black guy who, like, I'm saying black guy because I don't know what's socially acceptable anymore because these terms change.
I think black guy.
I can say
fine.
black, yeah, but this guy wouldn't care. If he was white, he'd be like demonized as the biggest racist in the world. Like. And it isn't coming from a place of like, oh, like this is like there are some very genuine feelings of frustration with the modern black community, and I think because of the way that social culture has shaped itself, like, and as I said, this is more of a response to, I think this is more of a response because of the internet and whatnot. Things have become so toxic and vitriolic that we're putting people on pedestals saying this is the prime example. We're having these litmus tests of if you don't think like if you don't agree with this specific thing, then you're a monster and you need to be depersoned. And that's not something I can really like.
I think okay. I agree with you that approach of like trying to influence culture isn't working, or maybe it's worked up to a point and is starting to become detrimental. I think that's true. I also think that, and I know you didn't say the opposite, but I think the whole pride thing of like, hell yeah, I'm gay or whatever. I don't think we're quite past the time where that is no longer useful. I think canceling people and like has reached kind of like a wall. But like the whole idea of like, oh well, if it's not normal, or if it's just normal, why are you treating it like it's not normal? I think it's.
Let me maybe like phrase something like this, because when I say like fight smarter, when you're the one to bring up sexuality and race or sex in the conversation, you automatically put yourself on the defensive because it allows anybody on the opposing side to come in and say, why are you bringing race, sex, or this, like, or whatever into this topic, rather than saying this. And that's what the right does. That's one of the tactics of people like Ben Shapiro and Steven Crowder, and like the reactionary and more clout-driven right is it's about saying, like, one of the biggest criticisms that the right has on the left, and it's somewhat effective with people in the center, is that they say the Democratic Party is the racist ones because they're the ones always bringing race into the issue, and to some extent. But to some extent, there is truth behind this because not the racism,
and like I kind of see where it's coming from, but it's mostly just like a appeal to ignorance.
But when you look at something like the Democratic Party, they bank on votes of minorities because they will never win the white Christian conservative, the Christian white male demographic. That's a very much more. That's the Republicans have that locked down, and the Republicans use race in that regard. The Republicans push racist policies, and they push policies that actively hurt minorities. But the Democrats focus so much on platitudes, like, and this is partially why, like, as me, someone who I like Bernie Sanders, and is because Bernie actually talks about policy. Like, what he's saying that is going to help, like, the minorities, but he doesn't have to go out of his way to save minorities. But to the same extent, during the 2016,
you've got to, like, if you have like a you've got to sell yourself. I guess I feel like that's what the tactic is. I think it's more like this almost feels more like an advertising problem than anything.
Well, yeah, that's. I mean, granted, I do blame the Democrats a lot for the modern, like.
Oh, I mean, that environment didn't come out of nowhere.
Yeah, because historically, and this is because in American politics, by the way that our politicians are bought out, you don't really see much change, and if you do, it's very much a bipartisan thing. And if something's bipartisan, it's never good for the people, or it's slightly good for the people, but it should have been better.
Yeah.
Or there are clear problems in it. Like, there's always a catch-22 on a bipartisan bill, and no one's happy. But when it comes to the way that the Democrats, like, the mainstream Democrats for the last maybe 20 years, which is there's a lot of, like, hilarity around it. When you look at the mainstream Democrats, there's like, well, the main way that they frame themselves is we're the party of the minorities. They say, oh, I support trans rights, I support gay rights, I support I'm against racism. Oh, the Republicans are racist. We support minorities, etc. And that's great. You can support minorities as much as you want, but what are you going to do for the people? And that's sort of where we are in America, because mainstream Democrats don't do the mainstream Democrats don't do anything to actually fix racism or change the racist policies in our system.
They're just trying to, like, tell people what they want to hear.
It's platitudes. It's absolutely platitudes. And
it's funny how much time I've spent thinking about Democrats and Republicans as a New Zealander. I mean, obviously, but American politics is what everyone talks about. I mean, we do. I guess we have, like.
Well, it's because America can systematically destroy the world if we wanted to.
Yeah, right. We can't blow up lots of people, so our politics don't matter. But I don't know. It's interesting because, like, people in New Zealand are often talking about American politics more so than our politics, because I guess your guys' situation is the one that's driving culture more and is on TV and stuff. Also, like, our two parties are, like, well, not, there's more than two parties, but our two main kind of left and right parties are, I think, a lot closer together, and both more on the left than your guys' fucking binary.
Oh yeah. No, our Democratic Party is essentially center. Like, it's actually depending on who you talk to.
Depends on how you feel about, like, healthcare and shit.
Yeah. Which.
Do you not want to be fucked if you get hurt?
There are so many intellectually dishonest arguments on both sides in regards to every issue. Like, I'm systematically frustrated with politics, but, like, at the same time, it's like I just want people to start actually having debates rather than these pissing contests about who's racist, who's not racist, or who's a bigot, who's not a bigot. I maybe like something like a good example is the recent H Bomber guy about climate, like on the climate change thing is, yeah, it's like this is how you do it. You don't go after Steven Crowder because he's a race, like he says racist or homophobic things. You go after Steven Crowder by showing how intellectually dishonest he is by show
that
like,
he's a liar and a fraud and everything.
Yeah, that's how you do it. That was like that moment where like he like H Bomber guy like shows the like where Crowder like is like, oh, Crowder showed this graph where sheets of ice were going up, and then he zooms out and it shows like the entire graph where it's like shows a constant downward with the slide up every so often. It's like that's how you beat them because they're not good arguments. It's the same thing where like he showed the Ben Shapiro debate, like what Ben Shapiro said, oh, people and like people whose houses are going to be flooded should just sell their homes and sell their land.
Yeah, that was great. I think that's it. Outside of just stuff like that, I think your idea overall of, well, let's actually talk with ideas and let's actually not just get caught up in fuck you. I think that can apply to lots of things. Like a friend of mine, a genderqueer friend of mine, Ren, they do a lot of I feel like I learned a lot about trans people and stuff just from what they've done, which is like they're like a performer and they've got like a one person like stage like play like performance called Z Queer as Fuck, and I watched it and it's kind of like this kind of it's like this biographical like story of how they became how they are, and that was really cool. Like obviously, you know, being unwanted or disapproved of and stuff and oppressed are like themes in the story, but watching that play helped me get a better picture than just like, well,
genuine good side or a genuine bad side.
I'm either on the good side or the bad side. It's like, well, I genuinely saw someone's story and I understood them, and I was like,
Dizzy
cool.
said something really stuck with me when we started this podcast, and that's you can frame any issue in any way, and that sort of comes back down to the issue of people have their different perspectives. People grew up in different cultures and different environments. Just because someone seems homophobic or someone doesn't agree with, it's the example. It's like, don't hate like if a Christian person has been brought up their whole life being told gays are wrong or gays are bad, what gives it to you to deperson that person or demonize that person? You're only going to make them. You're only going to double down. Like, listen to their criticisms. Like, be a fucking human being to them. Because if to them you're acting like the bad guy, you're acting like the demon,
where they're
never going to listen to anything you say.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's not like watching Ren's play made me decide, oh, I don't hate trans people or something. But like, if Ren had just gone on stage and just given like a fucking sermon on how if I don't like trans people, then, you know, I should go to hell or whatever, that would be be different. But when you have a genuine
this might seem a bit radical
or sharing of ideas,
like too far out of left field, or maybe just, too much to ask out of anybody.
Yeah, be a fucking person.
Even if
I
seems
think
like
that's
a monster,
generally
be patient with them. Give them the light of day, because even if they don't change, like in that conversation, and even if like it's a pain in the ass to deal with them, at the very least, if you're acting like a good normal person to them, like that's you're one less whatever minority you are that reaffirms their ideas. You should always be challenging people on their perspectives and their standpoints. And yeah.
I guess the hard thing here, like I feel like we're kind of reached sort of a natural endpoint to this conversation, but I do want to add that, like, it, as much as it's easy to say that, like, if you're, you know, a minority or something or in a position, it can be really tricky to start debating whether or not your rights should exist. You know, like it's like it feels. I can see how it would feel dangerous to even be like, oh, well, this is a thing. But you have to talk about it. Like, I guess it feels like ceding ground to be like, well, maybe let's put my rights in question. But as it stands,
Freeman said something very interesting once.
You're already
the
like
only
on
way you beat
this
racism
a
is by
side
not
where
talking about racism or not bringing up
you're
racism.
not where you want to be. Like,
well,
things are already
general,
bad, so it's like
the idea of like, oh, you can never talk about racism is silly. I think it comes back to a greater point, is that the act of talking about racism will never change a racist's mind, because most racists don't think they're racist. I think it comes back to the only way you beat racism is by showing that you're a normal human being and that there's nothing different from you. Just because of the color of your skin and your sexuality, there's nothing different from you than whatever person that might be racist. Because
I think we've got. I mean, I think it's a healthy balance. I think definitely we can't be too afraid to put people in an uncomfortable spot.
I know me saying this won't change anything because nobody listens to these podcasts.
But it can't all be.
Why don't
shaming.
we as the left? We've got a good grasp on what's socially correct or socially whatnot. Let's focus on the policies that are actually harming people right now. Let's focus on the infrastructure problems, the minority communities that have lead in their water, the disproportionate, well, I guess the whole drug war situation in general, because that affects minorities to an extreme rate. Let's work on getting policies put to reform our police, like police education. Yeah. Let's get political wins. So, because here's the other thing, something that really keeps a lot of minorities down is the fact that we have so much systematic racism.
Get some wins.
That they can't get good education. They don't have healthy diets, and they have toxins put in their system that chemically alters their brains to make them more violent and reaffirm racist beliefs. That's what lead does. Lead makes people dumb and violent, and what do you think that does? It reaffirms that blacks are dumb and violent, which is not true.
Yeah, I no, it's. I mean, these problems they're cycles, from that have been started from previous more intense disparity. And then once you've got a bad situation, it's gonna keep creating.
Let me end it
I woke up at 4 a.m. today. I don't have words, but
you can.
But no, I agree with you.
Bigotry,
it's a similar situation in New Zealand.
All you want, it's not going to change anything if you don't actually disrupt the systems that cause it, and if you don't challenge people's worldviews to see that maybe there is something wrong with shame only works if the person thinks they're doing something wrong. Let's be very clear. Shame only works if a person thinks they're wrong. People, if you prove to someone that they're wrong, or if someone's worldview is wrong, they will naturally feel shame for the things they've done. You don't have to force someone to feel shame. Sure. And manufacturing shame and societal outrage only leads to more extremism and more violence. You're going to be seeing more minorities getting hurt by crazy right-wing extremists. If they think you're the monsters, you're justifying to them their violence. That's what and it sucks. I get it. Take some fucking criticism, and this might be a hot take, but take some fucking criticism and think of the people think of the people in your communities that you're hurting by being so extreme and by being so by not engaging in actually trying to fix the system.
I would also like to add on, fuck Steven Crowder. A fucking dick. Just fuck him. I don't have any sympathy for his... Fuck that guy. Yeah, I know there's problems with the system. I know that they're creating a situation that's worse for everybody. I know, to get demonetized. But I just want to say fuck Steven Crowder. What a piece of shit. This has been Bros in a Landfill.
He's pretty bad.
I mean, bros talk. Yeah. It's been bros talk. We haven't done the real episode yet. All right. Fuck that guy.